Alright, it's day 29 of Muscle Music, a series in which I pick an album from this filter. I work out to it, I give my thoughts on it, and I only do albums I've never listened to before. So, I've never done the full White Album. Let's do it.
Honey, disconnect the phone. I'm back in the USSR.
We just finished up at the gym. We did a push day and then some other cardio stuff. So here are my thoughts on the Beatles' White Album. I'm going to give you my review while I take my dog out. I hope you're cool with that. So this album came out in 1968. It was one of the later stage albums in the Beatles' career. And it was amidst a lot of turbulence in the band. There was Yoko Ono making more of a presence in the recording studio, which the rest of the Beatles apparently hated. The producer went on this big hiatus for a while, and even Ringo left the band. So there's a lot of weird, different vibes going on. And you can definitely see that in the track listing of the album and the runtime. You know, it's like an hour and a half and there's like 30 different tracks. So they're trying a lot of different things. There's a lot of different genres going on. There's a lot of classic hits off of this album and there's a lot of duds. So it's just kind of a mishmash of a lot of things going on. And for being released at such a stage in their career, it's pretty interesting because this is like their only double album. And, you've got tracks like Back in the USSR, you've got Blackbird, you've got While My Guitar Gently Weeps. So all these great tracks. I know I'm missing a couple. But then you have tracks like Revolution 9, which are widely shit on by a lot of fans and casual listeners. And, it's rightfully so. I completely understand why listeners would do that. But I had to sit through the whole 8-minute runtime, so I totally get why, especially if you're putting this on as a vinyl. But at least they did it, at least they had the balls to be the highest selling group at the time, the biggest obviously at the time, and to be so experimental at a time where there'd be so little ROI on that kind of thing. At least they branched out and tried to do something like that. But just on its head as a song, it is pretty rough. I will say at the gym, though, surprisingly decent while I'm doing tricep extensions. Also, I just want to put this out there that there are a lot of people my age, or at least younger music listeners, who just say that, oh, the Beatles are overrated. Oh, they shouldn't be the number one band of all time, whatever. And I think that's complete bullshit. I think they deserve that title. I understand if they're not your personal favorite number one band of all time. They're not mine either. But the just sheer volume of really good tracks that they put out in the time that they did is incredible. They're extremely influential. They're all this other stuff. So this dude will not stop eating grass. What are you doing? However, that's not me giving the Beatles' entire catalog or even this album just a pass because, they're the Beatles. They get to have it. There are some genuine duds on this album, but that's to be expected. It's an hour and a half of music. Not every track is going to be a 10 out of 10. And I don't think this is my favorite Beatles album of all time, but, it is what it is. I do want to point out a couple tracks, though. Specifically, Back in the USSR, I think is a great track. I know this song because my dad told me when they were writing it, it's kind of a dig at the Beach Boys sound because they were very much Americana. They're like, oh, surfing USA, we're going to go down to so-and-so place and do this. But they just changed it to we're in the USSR. And so they're basically just ripping off their sound. And they made a really good track out of it. So good on them. I also really love the track While My Guitar Gently Weeps. It's this beautiful track written by George Harrison. And when he passed away, they did this whole concert in his honor where a lot of different guitarists and musicians performed a lot of his songs. And that one really stuck out to me when Prince did this really great guitar solo over it. Eric Clapton was there, a lot of other really big musicians. So, with that moment, it was really special. Also, the track Blackbird was the first song I ever learned on guitar, and it's just a beautiful little ballad, and it's a great track right in the middle of the album. You've also got Obla Di Obla Da, Happiness is a Warm Gun, Birthday. All these tracks are pretty great. But then you have tracks like Piggies, where they talk about, oh, he's a little piggy, and we can go to a little piggy place and have piggy fun. It's really weird. And again, that's just one track as an example. Obviously, there is 30 tracks, so a lot of it seems like they're just kind of throwing caution to the wind and just seeing what sticks. I will say, general rule of thumb, there are more good tracks than there are bad. All right, you're done. Now time to take this little dingo out too. I genuinely think if they trim this album down to maybe 12 tracks and maybe just shy of an hour, they cut a lot of the fat out of this, they could have a genuine 9 or 10 out of 10 album for me. What are you doing? You're crazy. This was also the album where they wrote a lot of the tracks on this retreat going into India, which is kind of an interesting backstory. And I think explains a bit more why they have so much of a musical exploration on this album, which is pretty interesting. It's also very interesting because a lot of tracks on the recording session of this just didn't make the album, but they're fantastic. Like Hey Jude and the original version of Revolution, not Revolution 1, they were released as a single, and I think, why wouldn't you put those on this album? They're both fantastic tracks, some of my favorite Beatles tracks, but whatever. Also, I don't know where to add this, but I want to include it somewhere. The track Hey Jude is originally called Hey Jules because it's a reference to John Lennon's son, Julian, because he was going through a lot of trouble because he was only 5 years old when John Lennon had an affair with Yoko Ono and then separated from Julian's mom and his ex-wife. And Paul McCartney had to be the one to be like, okay, let me write this kid a song to actually comfort him and make him feel better. Later change it to Hey Jude so it wasn't as, fully centric on Julian. But yeah, John Lennon's an asshole, among a litany of other things that I'm not going to get to in this video. Anyway, just focusing back on the album, I think there is so much that's going on at play that it almost feels like bit of a compilation, and I guess it makes sense because of the huge turmoil and group changes that were happening at the time, that it just kind of feels like, all right, whatever ideas that we have, just throw them out, and then, we'll make it work into an album format somehow. So I don't really totally appreciate that as a listener, but at the time, and given the circumstances, it makes sense. But I mean, the album went 24 times platinum, so I mean, who am I to judge, right? Anyway, this album is so classic, it's so big, it's so sprawling that I can't really do it justice in this kind of TikTok, so I'm gonna leave it at that. My favorite tracks probably have to go to Back in the USSR, Blackbird, While My Guitar Gently Weeps, as well as Helter Skelter. But if we're not including songs that I already knew beforehand, so kind of like hidden gems, probably have to go to I Will, as well as Your Blues. Yeah, given the circumstances, I think what they did with the album, it was pretty great. It's not necessarily my favorite Beatles project of all time or anything, but I can understand why it would be certain people's. If I had to give it a rating, probably like a mid to high 6, just because there's so much volume and so much stuff in the latter half of the album that just weren't doing it for me. I think round about like a mid to high 6, especially because the best songs are so great. Like and follow for more, unless this app gets banned. Goodbye. Ugh.